Gambia awaits a new era of democracy as its former ruler begins life in exile. Does Yahya Jammeh's forced exit set a new precedent for Africa? The world reacts as Donald Trump embarks on the first week of his presidency with a focus on building his administration. And after Ebola, why traditional burial practices are so important in Sierra Leone. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. We begin in West Africa, where Gambians celebrated in the streets on Sunday after West African Regional Military Force entered the capital city of Banjul and took control of the presidential palace hours after defeated leader Yahya Jammeh fled into exile. The regional force is expected to clear the way for the return of the country's newly elected President Adama Barrow, who earlier took refuge in nearby Senegal when Jammeh refused to leave office.
It is absolutely imperative that peace, security, and stability of the country be fully secure. The political and security gridlock imposed upon us after our victory in the elections of 1st December 2016 continues to present formidable challenges at all levels and is of fundamental concern.
Mai Hamadi Fati, President Barrow's special advisor, also alleged that Jammeh looted government bank accounts in the last days of his rule.
Within the period of 2 weeks alone, nearly $500 million were withdrawn by the former president, the government of the former president. Within 2 weeks, nearly $500 million. That's a lot of money, considering that we spend about $200 million on recurrent expenditure relating to payment of civil service and so forth.
Barrow reaffirmed Sunday his plans to establish a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to shed light on widely alleged human rights abuses during Jammeh's rule, which began in 1994 when he seized power in a bloodless coup. Human rights activists have alleged those abuses included arbitrary detentions, torture, and the killings of some opponents. By late Sunday, Jammeh was reported to be in Equatorial Guinea, which is not a member of the regional security grouping that spearheaded the planned intervention. Well, for some perspectives, I'm joined in studio by Nyaka Lagoke. He's a professor of history and an analyst on African issues. Welcome back, Nyaka.
Thanks again for the opportunity to continue the conversation.
Yes. Now, first, were you surprised by how things ended for Mr. Jammeh?
No, I was not.
Yeah.
I was on your show. You gave me the opportunity,
yeah.
And I said that the ECOWAS leaders will find an opportunity to resolve peacefully the electoral crisis in Gambia.
And it's good that it ended up in a rather peaceful way. But now this is the question. This has happened in the Gambia. Do you think this sets a precedent, at least in the West African region, for anybody in the future who may try to go against the will and wishes of the people?
Yes, and it's a good thing. And then I believe that now they did it, then of course they have to continue. If tomorrow, a leader loses the election and does not want, to relinquish power. But quickly, ECOMOG has already was involved in the Liberian Civil War, and they did a pretty good job under the leadership of Nigeria and Ghana. And because, there was some other issues, but, we were happy to see that, and we believe that it's going to go forward.
Now, do you think it helps that Gambia is a fairly small country with a very, really small army compared to that of Nigeria and the other West African regional nations? Or was it also the fact that perhaps West African leaders didn't like him anymore?
Oh, yeah, maybe. But, I know I have seen, the conversation about Yahya Jammeh. But at least, like I said again, this is the way forward. There is a new Africa that is being born. And then Nigeria, Ghana, and Senegal, individually or respectively, they have the moral authority to do such things because the leaders come to power through peaceful elections, and then therefore they can do that.
Yes, so there's that part, the moral authority, but also having the military might, which Nigeria has when you combine it with the other countries it helps a lot. Do you think this is something that could be witnessed in other parts of the continent, like East African region, the Central and Southern African region?
Oh, yes. The wind that is blowing on the continent of Africa, the wind of sovereignty, the wind of freedom, the wind of justice, that started in the western part of Africa, surely is going to touch different parts of Africa, Central, where there are many other leaders who do not want to leave power, just to mention Biya in Cameroon, and then the Bongo family, and then in the Congo Brazzaville, even in Congo Kinshasa. And I think that it's sending like a strong message that Africans want to take into their hands, their own affairs.
Perhaps, do you think this could be a lesson for regional powers, say in East Africa countries like Kenya and Tanzania, to rise up and kind of build that moral authority to be able to speak on behalf of the people of the region and stop countries or leaders in the region who may want to subvert justice for the citizens?
Yes, but in the case of, for instance, when we talk about East Africa, Kagame does not have the moral authority to do such things because he's seen as an hegemonic leader in the Congo. And but maybe Tanzania, right? Because the election went well there. Can play that role, and I think that things are going to go into that direction. As
a Pan-Africanist or a person who's trying to revive it, what is it the African Union as a continental body could do to ensure they entrench this kind of values? They make sure that it's not a one-off, but it's something that will be consistent.
Yeah. Again, there are the leaders. I said that here on your show. The leaders are trying. It's not always consistent, but they are trying. And in the case of the Gambia, I think that is going to be something that people are going to look and see that Africans can do things. And the African Union surely is going to go into that direction. Even in the Ivory Coast crisis, one thing that people do not know that I'm going to say, Nigeria refuses to go and do the war because Nigeria was being pushed, by the Europeans, and Nigeria did not want to get involved. This is how the French were obliged to go and go there. So Africans have been trying to speak with one voice and then express their own voices, and then we need to, to acknowledge that.
Yeah, definitely so. The story of Africa could be and is changing slowly. And so the stereotypes can start going away. As always, thank you very much for coming and sharing your perspective.
Thank you, Vincent. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you very much. Nyaka Lagoke is a professor of history and also an analyst on African issues. Now, Yahya Jammeh's refusal to relinquish power and the threat by West African nations to force him out militarily sent thousands of fleeing the country in fear. The UN Refugee Agency says at least 26,000 people have fled into Senegal. Ricky Shryock reports from the Senegalese border town of Karang.
Thousands have fled Gambia and crossed the border into Senegal. At the border, Sally Lee says she left her home in the Gambian capital, Banjul, out of fear for her safety. According to the United Nations Refugee Agency, at least 26,000 people have fled Gambia, and 80% of those are women and children. One woman arrived with her 5 children earlier in the week. She says she fled because she felt personally targeted by Yahya Jammeh's regime because of her political activism. She asked not to be identified.
Kids are not going to school. Since we came, these kids are not going to school. They're just playing around, doing nothing.
Amina and her mother Awa fled their home in Banjul on Tuesday.
Everybody has left. Everybody has left. Both old and young. You can see the small children. Everybody left.
The mother and daughter, along with their children and more than 100 other Gambians who have fled, are for now being housed and fed by Senegalese in the small town of Karang, where at least 3,000 of the displaced have arrived and are waiting to see when and if they can return home. Ricky Shryock for VOA News at the Senegal border in Karang.
Well, here in Washington, D.C., the U.S. Senate will vote on more of President Donald Trump's cabinet nominees this week, with a continued emphasis on filling the national security team. Key Republican senators are declaring their support for oil executive Rex Tillerson, tapped to be Secretary of State. Here's Michael Bowman reports.
Ayes are 98. and the nays are 1, and the nomination is confirmed.
Hours after Donald Trump took the oath of office, the Senate overwhelmingly confirmed his picks to lead the Pentagon and the Department of Homeland Security. Now, majority Republicans are rallying behind ExxonMobil CEO Rex Tillerson, whose cozy relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin had caused some to waver.
This wasn't an easy call, but I also believe that when there's doubt, the incoming president, gets the benefit of the doubt.
Tillerson's first hurdle will be a vote in the Foreign Relations Committee. Meanwhile, on the Senate floor, majority Republicans will press to confirm CIA Director nominee Mike Pompeo, whose failure to get a vote Friday irked the new Trump White House.
Senate Democrats are stalling the nomination of Mike Pompeo and playing politics with national security. That's what you guys should be writing and covering.
We're going to get them all through, but some will take a little bit longer than others.
Republicans note previous presidents entered the White House with more nominees confirmed than Trump has been accorded so far.
I remember very well in January of 2009, the Senate on the first day of the inauguration approved of 7 cabinet members, 7. Not 2. So my question is to my dear friends on the other side of the aisle, why in the hell won't we just go ahead and give the president his national security team when we need it more than at any time in recent history?
This is about whether the Senate is going to be a rubber stamp and whether the Senate is, in effect, going to abdicate its responsibilities to do oversight.
Democrats argue Trump's nominees have been slow to comply with financial disclosures and ethical reviews.
If there was ever a group of the cabinet nominees that cry out for rigorous scrutiny, it's this one. The president-elect's cabinet is a swamp cabinet full of billionaires and bankers that have conflicts of interest and ethical lapses as far as the eye can see.
Other contentious confirmation votes loom for nominees to lead the Treasury, Energy, and Health and Human Services departments, as well as the Environmental Protection Agency. Michael Bowman, VOA News, Washington.
Well, the swearing in of Donald Trump as America's president on Friday saw tens of thousands of people celebrate or protest in the nation's capital. Around the world, others watched with a mixture of admiration and apprehension. Mariam Diallo reports.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
As many Americans celebrated the inauguration of their 45th president, people outside the United States marked the day in their own ways. In Moscow, a Russian army clothing store flashed Trump's image on an electronic billboard and offered discounts to American citizens.
We hope that relations between our Russia and America will improve, that they'll find a common language in relation to Syria, that they will find a common language to get rid of what is going on there.
As far as I know, he is quite a controversial president in the history of the United States, but I hope he will gain the trust of Americans.
But Trump made clear in his inaugural speech that his administration will put American interests first.
For many decades, we've enriched foreign industry at the expense of American industry, subsidized the armies of other countries while allowing for the very sad depletion of our military. We've defended other nations' borders while refusing to defend our own.
The attitude has unnerved some in Mexico, where the respected weekly magazine Proceso warns the war is coming.
He's creating a community that is very adept at his aggressive, confrontational speech that tries to polarize American society, because not everything he says is true.
José Luis López Aguirre and his colleague Maria López Gutiérrez at the Pan American University in Mexico City see the situation differently.
I think that this possible threat of Trump has been greatly exaggerated. We should be waiting. We are dedicated to communication, to give reality and not just the show.
In West Africa's Nigeria and Niger, reactions are also mixed.
Americans have so much to write about Barack Obama's administration. We're praying for him. We're also praying for President Donald Trump to succeed in his government.
Despite President Trump's heated campaign in the past 1 year, our prayers are to him, as he should try and unify the world. We also hope he'll help the third world nations reach their potential.
The inauguration attracted U.S. residents of many nationalities to Washington.
I am very happy because in our country, we rarely see this kind of event. This is an honor that we are a minority group here, but have been invited to attend the transition of power from one U.S. president to another.
For me as a Buddhist monk living in this country, I'm happy with him and for participating in this event. This does not mean that I support him, but I'm only here to enjoy this inauguration.
As Trump supporters everywhere celebrate, hundreds gathered in London, West Bank, Brussels, and other cities to protest against his inauguration as U.S. president. Mariama Diallo, VOA News.
Well, former President Jimmy Carter currently holds the record for the longest post-White House career of any former U.S. president. Despite partisan animosity that defined much of the 2016 presidential election, Carter is taking a conciliatory approach to the new Trump administration, seeking a positive relationship with the new occupants of the White House. VOA's Ken Farabao has our report.
Donald Trump is the sixth commander-in-chief former President Jimmy Carter witnessed take office since returning to his hometown of Plains, Georgia, following Ronald Reagan's inauguration in 1981.
President Carter, President Clinton.
With Trump now in the White House amid historically low approval ratings, Carter recently told an audience during one of his weekly Sunday school lessons at Maranatha Baptist Church in Plains that the New York businessman wasn't his preferred candidate in the general election.
We have 22 voters in our family. None of our family voted for him.
While a number of former and current Democratic lawmakers skipped Trump's inauguration, Carter was not among them.
I was the only former president for a long time that said he was going, but I felt like we needed to get to know the new president. I think we need to give him support.
In an exclusive interview with Voice of America at the Carter Center in Atlanta, Carter explained his approach.
We want to be helpful to them when they get in office. So we hope that this relationship of supporting President Trump and his new administration will be both beneficial to them and also to help when they think it's appropriate, us to reach our goals in those particular areas of the world.
President Carter, who has a relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin, says one way he can help the Trump administration is by sharing information gathered through various Carter Center programs.
We're preparing a brief memorandum from me to the new Secretary of State and new Secretary of Defense, for instance, on our mapping program inside Syria and what we have learned from President Putin and that sort of thing.
As president, Carter mediated the Camp David talks in 1978, resulting in the first permanent peace agreement between Israel and Egypt. The former president says he hopes Trump will focus on peace between Israel and the Palestinians.
We've had a full-time office in Jerusalem and in Ramallah in the West Bank and also in Gaza now for 35 years. And we have a lot of inside information of what's going on inside the boundary of what we call the Holy Land, and I want to share that information with them.
I, Jimmy Carter, do solemnly swear that
When Carter was elected in 1976, the country was still reeling from the Watergate scandal. That year, he rode a wave of populist anger into the White House, in much the same way as Donald Trump in 2016. While Carter might not have voted for Trump, he is one of the few men alive today who understand the demands of the office of the presidency.
He needs understanding. He never has been involved in politics before, so he has a lot to learn. He'll learn sometimes the hard way like I did, sometimes a more easy way. But
a hostage crisis in Iran, rising inflation, and petroleum shortages were some of the factors that led to Carter's 1980 election loss to Ronald Reagan, making him one of two presidents in the last 40 years who served only one term. Kane Fairbaugh, VOA News, Atlanta, Georgia.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Coming up, after the outbreak, we'll look at barrier practices in Sierra Leone. Do they hinder or help the fight against Ebola? Stay with us.
I'm Milar Sega. I'm the host of VOA's The Correspondents, a roundup of the world's top stories with analysis from our dedicated reporters. It's really a conversation the same way that you would bring a friend to your home and ask them what's going on. And our correspondents will do that and answer those questions through their own eyes.
That appears a false choice in more ways than one.
We can't actually put you there, but we can come pretty close. In 30 minutes, we'll show you the world.
Well, in many African societies, it is common that preparing to bury the dead involves touching and washing the bodies. Now, health experts say burial rituals were responsible for thousands of Ebola infections. To stop the spread of Ebola, government and NGOs created burial teams made up of local volunteers. In Freetown, Sierra Leone, VOA's Jackson Vunganya visited the local Red Cross, which coordinated a burial team of about 800 volunteers.
In Sierra Leone, as in many other African societies, before burying a loved one, the common practice is to wash the bodies by hand. This practice had to be abandoned. Thousands of people were contracting the deadly virus through contact with the dead. The task of burying the dead was given to special burial teams organized by the government and local NGOs like the Red Cross. Unisa Karu is the head administrator at the Freetown offices of the Red Cross. His organization coordinated a burial team consisting of volunteers whose job was to collect the bodies and perform safe, dignified burials. He says that the burial teams played a critical role in fighting new infections of Ebola.
We don't just go and carry their loved one, we bury them. We go there, we counsel them, we talk to them, we sympathize with them. We tell them why we are there so that they can sure understand, because we have to put the body on the body bags. So it was never happened before in the history of Sierra Leone, but with the Ebola, we just have to. So we go to the community, we talk to them, we educate them before ever we are asked to take the body.
Sylvanus Kamara was the head of a local burial team. He says that contrary to belief that they were forcefully taking bodies, his team worked closely with grieved families in preparation for the burials.
When you go to the community, we are because we got an alert from command center. When we got the alerts, we go there, the team will go there. We ask the family members to provide all the necessary materials. The only thing that we can't allow the family members for them not to touch the bodies, but we give them the right to provide all necessary materials. We can use all the necessary materials to prepare the body and allow the family members to conduct prayers. After prayer, we take the body to the cemetery to do burials.
Sierra Leone was declared Ebola-free in March of 2016. The burial team members are now working to reintegrate back into their communities. Sylvanus Kamara says that many will require vocational training and psychosocial counseling.
Because we have done with the Ebola, but the Red Cross have worked on today a project when UNDP have approved, when some of the workers that involved in the Ebola, some of them are on business education, while some are going to school, continue their education, while some are doing their career development,
But there are other burial workers who continue with their work. These are the young men working at the King Tom Cemetery in the center of Freetown. They call themselves the Friends of the Dead. This has always been their full-time job. Some of them have relatives buried here. Were you guys not scared that you might contract Ebola?
No, we are well adhered.
You were putting on the protective gear, PPE. Did the government give you that?
Yeah, the government concern give you all that.
Most people say they never believe.
No, yes.
Some of us, you never believe.
But since my family are dead.
Right. You have family members who passed away?
Yes.
Are they buried here?
Yes.
Yeah, they are buried here. Even though Ebola is gone, the memories of their dead loved ones still lingers in these sites. It is said that nobody experienced firsthand the magnitude of the Ebola epidemic like the people who were involved in burying the dead. The young men at the King Tom Cemetery told me that they hope they have seen the last of such a crisis in their lifetime. If, however, it did happen again, there's a feeling that they will be better equipped to deal with the aftermath. For Voice of America, I'm Jackson Vunganyi, Freetown, Sierra Leone.
Thanks a lot, Jackson. It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, we asked you about your hopes for 2017. We'll share your Facebook comments when we come back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Gambia, ECOWAS troops position themselves at strategic locations across Gambia to provide security ahead of the arrival of the new president, Adama Barrow. The Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is in Tanzania to start a three-nation East Africa trip. 4 Cameroonian soldiers, including a general who was coordinating the fight against Nigerian Boko Haram Islamists, were killed Sunday in a helicopter crash. Finally, in Kenya, Wildlife Service collared lions in Nairobi National Park as one of several short and long-term management measures for lion conservation. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back. Now, last week, we asked you to share your hopes, expectations, and aspirations for 2017. We got a lot of great responses, and we want to share them with you. Well, Bernard Omweri from Kisii in Kenya says the African Union has to be reinstitutionalized to serve the common man rather than serving the interest of dictators. Mongale Philip II from Webuye in Kenya hopes for peace in South Sudan and a willingness by the African Union to promote democracy, good governance, and peace. Joseph S. Zina from Monrovia in Liberia hopes for a smooth transition in the upcoming 2017 election in Liberia. Also, Mary Omotoso from Odo Ekiti in Nigeria would like Africa to invest in its youth. Well, thank you very much for your responses, and please keep them coming. Go to Facebook. The address is Africa54, and tell me what are your hopes for 2017, or send me a tweet at VOA Vince Makori. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com for more news. Tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC. And in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. A plate is a dish that you put your food on.
Have a lot on your plate.
Hey Anna, I'm having a party this weekend. You should come.
I wish I could, but my weekend is really busy. I'm baking a wedding cake, writing my article, teaching 2 classes, and oh, my parents are visiting.
Wow, you have a lot on your plate.
I do.
To have a lot on your plate means that you are dealing with many responsibilities or problems at one time. Imagine a plate being so full that it cannot fit any more food on it. Someone who has a lot on their plate is very busy, maybe too busy. And that's English in a Minute.